The fluorescent lights in conference room B flickered like they always did during thunderstorms, casting shadows across the mahogany table where I'd presented countless project updates over my 23 years at Nexus Technologies. But today, those shadows seemed darker, more ominous, as if they knew what was coming before I did. Marcus Wheeler, my manager for the past 18 months, sat across from me with that particular smirk I'd grown to despise, the one that appeared whenever he took credit for my team's work at board meetings. To his left, Sandra from HR clutched her tablet, avoiding eye contact like she was witnessing a car crash in slow motion. To his right sat Derek Chin, the VP of Engineering, scrolling through his phone with the practiced indifference of someone who'd rather be anywhere else. "Harold," Marcus began, leaning back in his chair with the confidence of a man who never built anything himself but had mastered the art of corporate politics. "I'll cut straight to the chase. Your team doesn't need you anymore." The words hung in the air like smoke from a discharged weapon. I felt my 62-year-old heart skip a beat, not from surprise, I'd seen this coming for weeks, but from the sheer audacity of his phrasing. "Not. We're restructuring. Not. The company's moving in a different direction. But your team doesn't need you." My team. The 7 brilliant engineers I'd handpicked, mentored, and molded into one of the most innovative groups in the entire company. The team that had generated 3 patents in the last year alone, saving Nexus Technologies approximately $12 million in licensing fees. "I see," I replied, keeping my voice steady despite the rage building in my chest like a pressure cooker. "And may I ask what led to this decision?" Marcus's smirk widened. "Performance issues, Harold. You've been coasting on past achievements. The younger generation needs leadership that understands modern development practices, agile methodologies, DevOps integration." He rattled off buzzwords like a Silicon Valley bingo card, each term a small dagger designed to make me feel obsolete. Sandra finally looked up from her tablet. "Mr. Morrison, we're prepared to offer you a severance package, 3 months' pay, continued health benefits through the end of the year, and of course, your pension remains intact." "How generous," I said, allowing myself a thin smile. What they didn't know, what none of them could possibly know, was that I'd been preparing for this moment since Marcus had been promoted over me 18 months ago. Every slight, every stolen idea, every undermined initiative had been carefully documented. But more importantly, I'd been working on something special. Something that would make them understand exactly what they were throwing away. "When would you like me to clear out?" I asked, already knowing the answer. "Today," Marcus said, barely suppressing his glee. "Security will escort you to your desk to collect your personal belongings. Your access badges and credentials will be deactivated by 5 p.m. Derek finally looked up from his phone. "Harold, I want you to know this wasn't personal. It's just business." I stood slowly, my knees protesting after sitting for the brief 15-minute execution of my career. "Of course, Derek. Just business." I buttoned my suit jacket, the same charcoal gray I'd worn to my first day at Nexus, and nodded to each of them in turn. "I'll go pack my things." As I reached the door, I turned back one last time. Marcus was already typing on his laptop, probably drafting the email announcement of my departure. Sandra was making notes about the exit interview we both knew would never happen. Derek had returned to his phone. "Oh, Marcus," I said, my hand on the door handle. "You might want to review the documentation for Project Prometheus before Monday's client presentation. I'm sure you're familiar with all the technical details, of course." For the first time, I saw his smirk falter. Project Prometheus was our latest initiative, a revolutionary AI-driven security system that 3 major clients were ready to sign for, worth approximately $40 million in contracts. Marcus had been taking credit for it in every meeting, but we both knew he couldn't explain how it worked if his life depended on it. The walk from conference room B to my former corner office, felt like a funeral procession. Word had already spread through the department's invisible network of gossip and speculation. Heads popped up from cubicles like prairie dogs sensing danger, then quickly disappeared when I made eye contact. 23 years of relationships reduced to awkward glances and hurried looks away. Tom Briggs from security walked beside me, his hand hovering near my elbow as if I might bolt for the server room and start deleting files. Tom was a good man. We'd shared coffee and complaints about the Giants' defensive line for years, but today he was just another instrument of corporate protocol. "I'm sorry about this, Harold," he said quietly as we entered my office. "Don't be, Tom. You're just doing your job." I grabbed a cardboard box from beside my desk. I'd actually brought it in myself 2 weeks ago, hidden behind the filing cabinet. Preparation is everything. My office told the story of my career in carefully arranged artifacts. The Innovation Award, from 2012, when my team had developed the encryption algorithm that became the backbone of Nexus's entire security suite. A photo from the company picnic in 2015, my team wearing matching t-shirts with "Morrison's Marauders" printed across the front, a joke that had stuck and become a badge of honor. The coffee mug Sarah, my youngest engineer, had given me last Christmas. "World's okayest boss," which never failed to make me smile. I packed slowly, methodically, making sure Tom saw everything I took. Nothing from the company, nothing proprietary. Just personal items and memories. What Tom couldn't see was what I wasn't taking: the USB drive hidden behind the picture frame, the one containing not company secrets, but something far more valuable: the complete, unfiltered history of every project my team had completed, every innovation Marcus had claimed, every shortcut he'd forced us to take that compromised quality for the sake of arbitrary deadlines. "Mr. Morrison?" Sarah Park stood in my doorway, her eyes red-rimmed. Behind her, I could see James Wright and Patricia Huang, 2 more of my engineers. "We just heard. This is bullshit." "Language, Sarah," I said gently, continuing to pack. "And careful. The walls have ears, and you still have careers here." "Not for long," James muttered. "If they can do this to you, they can and will do it to anyone," I finished. "Which is why you need to be smart. Keep your heads down, do your work, and remember everything I taught you about documentation." Patricia stepped forward. "The Prometheus presentation on Monday. Marcus doesn't understand the neural network integration. He's been asking us to simplify the explanation, to make it more accessible." I wrapped my coffee mug in newspaper, taking my time. "Then I suggest you simplify it exactly as he requests. Give him precisely what he asks for." The 3 exchanged glances. They knew me well enough to understand the subtext. Marcus wanted simple? He'd get simple. So simple that any technical reviewer would immediately recognize that whoever was presenting didn't understand the fundamental architecture of the system. "But the clients," Sarah started, "will make their own decisions based on the information presented," I said, placing the mug carefully in the box. "I have faith that truth has a way of surfacing, especially in technical matters." My desk phone rang. I glanced at the caller ID, Marcus, probably wondering why I was taking so long. I let it ring. "Mr. Morrison," James said urgently. "The Prometheus backend authentication system, the one you designed, it's intricate. If something goes wrong..." "Nothing will go wrong," I assured him, lifting the box. "The system is perfectly stable. As long as the proper authentication codes are entered Monday morning before the presentation, everything will run smoothly." What I didn't mention was that those authentication codes were in my personal notebook, the one I was currently placing in my box. The system would work without them, technically, but it would run in demonstration mode, a detail buried so deep in the documentation that Marcus would never find it. In demonstration mode, the system looked perfect but would reveal its limitations under any real scrutiny. Tom shifted uncomfortably. "Harold, we need to keep moving." I nodded, taking one last look around the office. On the whiteboard, half erased, were the remnants of last week's brainstorming session, my handwriting mixed with my team's, solving problems Marcus couldn't even understand, let alone solve himself. The elevator descended from the 20th floor with agonizing slowness, each floor marking another step away from the life I'd built. Tom stood beside me, the box of my possessions between us like a barrier. At the 15th floor, the doors opened, and Marcus stepped in. "Harold," he said, his tone suggesting friendly concern that his eyes didn't support. "I wanted to make sure you understood this isn't personal. You've had a good run, but the industry's changing. We need leaders who can pivot, who understand disruption and transformation." I almost laughed. Marcus threw around Silicon Valley jargon like confetti, but I'd never seen him write a single line of code, never seen him actually solve a technical problem. He was what we used to call a PowerPoint engineer, all presentation, no substance. I understand perfectly, Marcus, I replied, shifting the box in my arms. Change is inevitable. Good, good. He seemed relieved that I wasn't making a scene. And about Project Prometheus, I'll need you to send over any personal notes you might have. The team seems to think you kept some documentation outside the shared drives. Personal notes? I raised an eyebrow. Marcus, I'm surprised. Hasn't everything always been thoroughly documented in the official channels? You've been leading the project for months now, taking all those client calls, presenting to the board. Surely you have everything you need. His jaw tightened. We both knew he'd been copying my reports, changing the author name, and submitting them as his own. But admitting he needed my personal notes would be admitting he didn't understand the project he'd been claiming credit for. Of course, he said stiffly. I just wanted to ensure continuity. The elevator continued its descent. 10th floor. 9th. 8th. You know, I said conversationally. I remember when I hired you 6 years ago. Fresh from your MBA, full of ideas about synergy and optimization. Do you remember what I told you then? Marcus's reflection in the elevator doors looked uncomfortable. Something about learning the technology before trying to manage it. Close. I said that in technology, respect is earned through understanding, not through authority. That the best managers are those who could do the job of anyone they manage, if necessary. 7th floor. 6th. Times have changed, Harold. Modern management is about vision, not technical minutiae. Minutiae. I repeated, savoring the word. Is that what we're calling the ability to actually build things now? 5th floor. 4th. By the way, Marcus said, his smirk returning, I've promoted Bradley Chin to team lead. He's young, hungry, understands the new direction we're taking. Your team seems to respect him. Bradley Chin. 26 years old, 2 years out of college, and Marcus's golf buddy. The same Bradley who'd crashed the development server 3 times in the last month by pushing untested code directly to production. The same Bradley who thought encryption was basically just scrambling things up. My team didn't respect him, they tolerated him because they had to. 3rd floor. 2nd. I'm sure Bradley will do wonderfully, I said, allowing myself a small smile. He has such interesting ideas about system architecture. Did you know he suggested last week that we could improve performance by removing what he called redundant error handling? Marcus nodded enthusiastically, missing the horror of what he was agreeing to. Exactly the kind of fresh thinking we need. The elevator doors opened to the lobby. The security desk where I'd badged in every morning for over 2 decades stretched before me. The marble floors I'd walked across carrying the box of belongings for my first day, so similar to the one I carried now for my last. Well, Harold, Marcus extended his hand. Best of luck in your future endeavors. I looked at his hand for a moment, then shifted my box to shake it. His grip was weak, sweaty, the handshake of someone who never had to grip anything tighter than a golf club. Thank you, Marcus. I hope you get everything you deserve. He missed the ambiguity, of course, already turning back to the elevator, probably eager to send out the announcement of his triumphant restructuring. As the doors closed on his smiling face, I heard my phone buzz with a text message. Then another. Then another. Standing in the lobby, I pulled out my phone. The messages were from my team, but also from others, engineers from different departments, people I'd helped over the years, even a few managers who'd maintained their technical edge despite the corporate pressure to become pure politicians. Heard what happened? This is insane. David from Cloud Services. Harold, if you need a reference, call me immediately. Jennifer, who'd left Nexus 2 years ago to start her own company. They're going to regret this. Anonymous, but I recognized the number as someone from the board's technical advisory committee. Tom walked me to the front doors, where the Seattle rain had started again, casting the streets in that particular gray that made the city feel like it was mourning with you. My car was in the parking garage, but I needed a moment to breathe. Take care of yourself, Harold, Tom said, genuine concern breaking through his professional facade. You too, Tom. And do me a favor, keep an eye on my team. They're good people, and they're about to go through hell. He nodded, understanding more than he could say while on duty. I walked to my car, a 15-year-old Honda Accord that Marcus had once mocked as not befitting a senior engineer. But it was reliable, practical, and paid for three things that mattered more to me than impressing people at valet stands. As I loaded my box into the trunk, I noticed a small envelope tucked under my windshield wiper. Inside was a handwritten note. Check your personal email. A friend. I sat in my car, engine running, heater fighting against the October chill, and opened my personal Gmail. There was a new message from an anonymous account, subject line. You're not alone. The email contained a single link to a shared drive. When I opened it, I found myself looking at dozens of folders, each labeled with a date and incident number. Someone had been documenting Marcus's management failures. Every missed deadline he'd blamed on others, every technical decision he'd overridden that had caused problems, every instance of him taking credit for work he didn't understand. But who had compiled this? I studied the organization, the meticulous attention to detail, and then I knew. Patricia Huang. She had the same methodical approach to documentation that I'd taught her, but she'd added her own touch, cross-references to email threads, Slack messages, even recordings of meetings where Marcus had demonstrated his technical incompetence. My phone rang. Unknown number. Hello? Mr. Morrison? The voice was disguised, clearly using a voice changer, but I could hear the nervousness underneath. Don't say my name. I know you know who this is. I understand, I said carefully. Monday's presentation isn't just about Prometheus. There's going to be a technical audit team there, sent by the clients, not announced to management. They want to verify the capabilities before signing. Marcus doesn't know. My grip on the phone tightened. A technical audit meant deep questions, code reviews, live demonstrations of knowledge. It meant the difference between PowerPoint promises and actual capability would be exposed. Interesting, I said neutrally. Your authentication codes, we can't find them in the documentation. The system works without them, but it's not the same, I finished. The authentication codes unlock the full capability. Without them, you have a very impressive demo that won't stand up to real scrutiny. Can you? I'm no longer an employee, I reminded them. I can't access company systems or provide company information. That would be inappropriate. There was a pause. But if someone were to figure it out on their own, then they would need to understand the Fibonacci sequence I taught in my advanced cryptography workshop last year, apply it to the hexadecimal values of the founding date of Nexus Technologies, and remember what I always said about prime numbers being the poetry of mathematics. Poetry of mathematics, they repeated slowly. Thank you for nothing. You're welcome for nothing, I replied, and hung up. My house in Wallingford had been my sanctuary for 15 years, a 1920s craftsman that I'd restored myself, piece by piece, in the same methodical way I approached code. My wife Linda had passed 3 years ago, and since then, the house had become more workspace than living space. Her pottery still lined the shelves, frozen in time, while my computers and monitors had gradually colonized every flat surface. I set my box of office belongings on the dining room table and walked to what Linda used to call my cave, a converted bedroom where 3 monitors formed a semicircle around an ergonomic chair she'd bought me for my 50th birthday. The sticky note she'd attached to it was still there. For the man who builds the future but forgets to stand up and stretch. I powered up my personal system, completely separate from anything Nexus-related, of course. I'd been careful about that. What appeared on my screens was my own project, something I'd been working on for the past year during my supposed coasting period. Marcus thought I'd been slowing down, but in reality, I'd been building something that made Project Prometheus look like a student exercise. I called it Project Phoenix, because sometimes you have to burn down the old to birth something new. Phoenix was an AI-driven code analysis system that could evaluate not just the quality of code, but the competence of the people claiming to have written it. It analyzed coding patterns, comments, version control history, and even the way problems were approached. It could, with startling accuracy, identify who actually understood what they were doing versus who was copying and pasting from Stack Overflow. I tested it on Nexus's codebase, carefully, legally, using only publicly available repositories and code samples from conferences. The results were illuminating. Marcus's contributions, consistently scored in the bottom 5%, while my team members ranged from 75% to 95%. Bradley Chin, Marcus's new team lead, scored 12%. My phone buzzed. Sarah Park, texting from her personal number. Team meeting in 30. Marcus wants us to realign our priorities. We all know what that means. I texted back. Remember what I taught you about version control. Always commit your best work with clear attribution. Already done. Everything for the last 6 months, backed up with timestamps and digital signatures. Smart girl. She'd learned well. I opened my notebook, the physical one I'd carried for years, filled with handwritten notes that Marcus had mocked as analog thinking. But handwritten notes couldn't be hacked, couldn't be deleted remotely, and in my experience, the act of writing by hand made you think more carefully about what you were documenting. The authentication codes for Prometheus were there, of course, but so was something else, a complete audit trail of every security vulnerability Marcus had insisted we ignore to meet deadlines. We'll patch it later, he'd say, but later never came. Those vulnerabilities were still there, buried in code he didn't understand, in systems he took credit for. I wasn't planning to exploit them. I wasn't a criminal. But if someone were to run a standard security audit, the kind that careful clients always requested, they would find them. And they would find Marcus's digital signature approving each one, overriding the engineering team's objections. Another text, this time from James. He's already breaking things. Wants us to streamline the error handling in Prometheus. Says it's too complex for the presentation. Streamlining error handling before a live demo to technical auditors. It was like removing the safety net before a tightrope walk. I almost felt sorry for Marcus. Almost. By evening, my phone hadn't stopped buzzing. The news of my departure had spread through the Seattle tech community like wildfire. Nexus wasn't the biggest company in town, but it was respected, and I'd been there long enough to become part of the landscape. I was reviewing my LinkedIn messages when a name stopped me cold. Robert Kim, CTO of Meridian Systems, Nexus's biggest competitor. Harold, heard about Nexus's loss. Their stupidity could be your opportunity. Coffee tomorrow? Robert. Meridian had been trying to poach me for years, but I'd always been loyal to Nexus. That loyalty had been to the technology, to my team, to the problems we were solving, not to the management structure that had finally rejected me. I messaged back. Tomorrow, 10 a.m., Victrola on 15th. The rain had turned to a steady drizzle, the kind that Seattle residents don't even notice anymore. I stood at my window, watching the drops trace patterns on the glass, and thought about patterns in general. Marcus followed patterns too, predictable ones. He always took credit on Thursdays, when the weekly reports went out. He always scheduled his strategy sessions for 4 p.m. on Fridays, when people were too tired to argue. And he always underestimated the people who actually did the work. My laptop chimed with a video call request. It was Jennifer Walsh, the one who'd left Nexus to start her own company. "Harold, you beautiful bastard," she said as soon as I answered. "Please tell me you're finally free to join the real world." "Depends on what you mean by the real world," I replied. "I mean the world where people who can actually build things get to make decisions. I've got 3 contracts lined up that need exactly your kind of expertise. Security systems for financial institutions. Real work, real problems, real money. I'm listening. But first," she leaned closer to the camera, "tell me you've got something planned for that weasel Marcus. I know you, Harold. You don't go quietly." "I don't know what you're talking about," I said, maintaining a poker face. "I'm simply enjoying my unexpected early retirement." She laughed. "Right. And I'm sure it's just a coincidence that Marcus has to present Prometheus on Monday to clients who happen to include my former colleague who now runs technical procurement for Chase Bank. The world is full of coincidences. Harold, I'm serious about the offer. Full partner position. You'd be leading a team of engineers who actually want to learn, not just collect paychecks. And the best part? No Marcus types. I've made sure of that. Let me get through Monday first," I said. "Then we'll talk." After I hung up, I pulled up the Prometheus codebase on my personal backup, legal, of course, since I'd written most of it on my own time, before it became a Nexus project. The beauty of the system wasn't just in its functionality, but in its complexity. It was like a symphony where every instrument had to play perfectly, or the whole thing would reveal itself as noise. Marcus thought he could conduct this symphony by waving his arms and looking confident. Monday, he'd learn the difference between conducting and actually understanding the music. Saturday morning arrived gray and misty, Seattle wearing its usual October uniform. Victrola Coffee was packed with the weekend crowd, freelancers with their MacBooks, students arguing about philosophy, and tech workers who couldn't quite disconnect even on weekends. Robert Kim had claimed a corner table, 2 cups already waiting. "Ethiopian single origin for you," he said as I sat down. "I remember from that AWS conference 3 years ago. You said most coffee tastes like burned rubber, but this one was different." "Good memory," I said, appreciating both the coffee and the attention to detail. It was the kind of thing Marcus would never remember, too focused on the big picture to notice the human details that actually mattered. Robert didn't waste time with small talk. "I know what Prometheus really is, Harold. Not the marketing fluff Marcus has been spreading, but the actual architecture. It's brilliant, the way you've integrated behavioral analysis with predictive modeling. We've been trying to build something similar for 18 months and haven't come close. Interesting that you know the technical details," I said carefully. Marcus has been very protective of that information. Robert smiled. "Marcus tried to poach one of my engineers last month. Promised him technical leadership of Prometheus after you were gone. My engineer strung him along for 3 weeks, attending secret meetings where Marcus tried to explain the system. He pulled out his phone, showing me a text thread. Look at this. Marcus actually said the neural network was basically like a really smart spreadsheet." I nearly choked on my coffee. The neural network in Prometheus had taken 6 months to design, using a novel approach to pattern recognition that I'd published a paper on 2 years ago. Calling it a smart spreadsheet was like calling the space shuttle a really fast bicycle. But here's what's really interesting. Robert continued. "The clients for Monday's presentation? They've hired an independent technical auditor, Dr. Angela Foster from MIT. She literally wrote the textbook on AI security systems. She's going to eat Marcus alive." Dr. Foster. I knew her by reputation, brilliant, thorough, and absolutely merciless when it came to technical incompetence. She'd once publicly destroyed a Fortune 500 CEO who'd claimed their company's AI was revolutionary, when it was actually just repackaged open-source code. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked. "Because I want you to join Meridian, but more than that, I want Nexus to understand what they've lost. Harold, you're not just a good engineer, you're the kind of engineer who makes other engineers better. That team of yours? They're brilliant because you taught them to be." Marcus would disagree. "He says I've been coasting." Robert laughed, loud enough that nearby tables looked over. "Coasting? You published 3 papers last year under a pseudonym. Yes, I figured out H. Montgomery was you. Your team has the lowest bug rate and highest customer satisfaction scores in Nexus history. You've been carrying that entire department, while Marcus played golf with the board members. You've done your homework. I have to. I'm trying to recruit a legend." He leaned forward. "Here's my offer, Chief Technology Architect, reporting directly to me. Your own team, your own projects, and complete autonomy on technical decisions. Plus, equity that would make your Nexus pension look like pocket change. And Marcus? Marcus is about to learn what happens when you build a house of cards in a city known for rain." Robert's expression turned serious. "But I'm not offering this to spite him. I'm offering it because we need someone who understands that technology isn't about buzzwords and presentations. It's about solving real problems with elegant solutions." My phone buzzed. "Sarah again. Emergency. Marcus just sent us new deployment instructions for Monday. He wants us to disable logging to improve performance. This is insane. Disabling logging before a technical audit was like performing surgery with the lights off. Every action, every process, every decision the system made would be invisible. If something went wrong, and with Marcus's modifications, something would definitely go wrong, there would be no way to diagnose it. I need to think about your offer," I told Robert. "Can we talk Tuesday? After the Monday massacre," he said with a knowing smile. Of course. But Harold, one more thing. Jennifer Walsh isn't the only one interested. I've had calls from Amazon, Microsoft, and a startup that's about to announce Series B funding. You're about to be very popular. As I walked back to my car, I thought about popularity, about value, about the strange metrics by which corporations measure worth. Marcus measured everything in PowerPoints and profit margins. But real value, the kind that lasted, was in the code that ran reliably at 3 a.m., in the junior engineer who learned to think systematically, in the elegant solution that prevented problems rather than patching them later. Sunday arrived with unexpected sunshine, one of those rare October days when Seattle pretends to be Southern California. I was in my backyard, tending to Linda's garden, now my garden, when Patricia Huang appeared at the gate. Mr. Morrison? I'm sorry to bother you at home. Patricia, you're never a bother. Come in. Coffee? She followed me into the kitchen, nervous energy radiating from her slight frame. Patricia was one of my best engineers, quiet, methodical, with an ability to see patterns that others missed. She was also, I now knew, the anonymous documentarian who'd been tracking Marcus's failures. I know you know, she said without preamble, about the documentation I've been keeping. I suspected, I admitted, pouring coffee into Linda's handmade mugs. Your organizational style is distinctive. I started 6 months ago, when Marcus overrode your security recommendations for the Phoenix project. She stopped, eyes widening. I mean Prometheus. I set down the coffee pot carefully. What did you just say? Patricia's face went through several shades of red. I've been tracking your personal GitHub. The anonymous one. I recognized your coding style in the commits. Phoenix is what Prometheus should have been, isn't it? Before Marcus made us cut corners? My secret project, exposed by the very patterns I'd taught her to recognize. I should have been angry, but instead I felt a strange pride. I'd trained her too well. Phoenix is theoretical, I said carefully. A thought experiment in what's possible when you're not constrained by corporate demands. It's more than that, Patricia insisted. It's Prometheus without the vulnerabilities, without the shortcuts, without the compromises. It's what we could have built if Marcus hadn't been rushing us to market. She pulled out her laptop, showing me her analysis. She'd mapped every compromise in Prometheus back to a solution in Phoenix. It was thorough, brilliant, and absolutely damning to Marcus's management. Why show me this? I asked. Because tomorrow, when Dr. Foster asks about the system architecture, she's going to see these gaps. And when she does, Marcus is going to blame the team. He's going to say we weren't competent enough to implement his vision. Her hands clenched around the mug. I've watched him do it before, take credit for successes, distribute blame for failures. And you want to protect the team. I want to protect the truth. She corrected. Mr. Morrison, I have every email where Marcus overrode security protocols, every message where he ignored warnings, every meeting recording where he dismissed concerns as engineering overthinking. But I can't release them without destroying my career. You don't need to, I said, understanding dawning. Dr. Foster is thorough. She'll ask for documentation. Marcus will provide the official records, the ones he's edited. But in technical audits, they also interview the team members individually. And if we all tell the same story? With specific dates and incidents that happen to match your documentation. I let her complete the thought. Patricia smiled for the first time since arriving. You taught us to always tell the truth in technical matters. That reputation follows you. Speaking of truth, I said, the authentication codes for tomorrow. Sarah figured them out. The Fibonacci sequence applied to Nexus's founding date, filtered through prime numbers. The poetry of mathematics. You taught that in your cryptography workshop. And Bradley? Patricia's smile turned wicked. Bradley doesn't even know there are authentication codes. Marcus didn't tell him because he doesn't know what they're for. They're both assuming the system will just work. We sat in comfortable silence, drinking coffee from Linda's mugs, surrounded by her garden that I'd kept alive through 3 Seattle winters. Sometimes the best revenge isn't active destruction. It's simply stepping back and letting people face the consequences of their own actions. Mr. Morrison, Patricia said finally, whatever happens tomorrow, I want you to know that you're the reason I became a real engineer. Not just someone who writes code, but someone who understands systems, who thinks about implications, who cares about doing things right. That's worth more than any job. I replied, and meant it. By Sunday evening, the Seattle tech community was buzzing with anticipation. Word had leaked, as word always does, that something significant was happening at Monday's Nexus presentation. My phone showed 17 missed calls from Marcus, each voicemail more frantic than the last. Harold, we need to discuss the transition. Call me back. Harold, there seems to be some confusion about the documentation. Professional courtesy demands. Harold, damn it, I know you know about the audit. This is sabotage. I didn't return the calls. Professional courtesy, after all, was a two-way street, and Marcus had closed that road when he smirked at me across the conference table. Instead, I was on a video call with my team, former team, each in their own home, preparing for tomorrow. Remember, I told them, you don't need to lie. You don't need to sabotage anything. Just answer every question honestly and completely. If Dr. Foster asks about a design decision, explain who made it and why. If she asks about documentation, show her everything, including the concerns you raised. James had his camera off, but his voice was clear. Marcus sent Bradley to my apartment an hour ago. Wanted me to come in tonight for emergency preparations. I told him I had food poisoning. Same, added David Chen, one of the senior developers. Except I said migraine. He can't force us to work Sunday night, and he knows it. Sarah was taking notes, as always. Dr. Foster's reputation is legendary. She once made a CEO cry during a technical review. Actually cry. She values competence and honesty. I said, give her both, and you'll be fine. Try to deceive her, and she'll destroy you. Marcus and Bradley are about to learn that the hard way. Monday arrived like a reckoning. I woke at 5 a.m., not from anxiety but from anticipation. Somewhere across Seattle, Marcus was probably already at the office, frantically trying to understand systems he'd claimed to have mastered. Bradley was likely copying and pasting from Stack Overflow, hoping to cobble together answers to questions he didn't even understand. My phone showed a text from Sarah, sent at 4:47 a.m. We're all here. Marcus has been here since midnight. He's locked himself in conference room A with Bradley. The smell of Flop's sweat is overwhelming. At 7 a.m., I dressed carefully, not in my usual engineering casual, but in the same charcoal suit I'd worn to my dismissal. If anyone happened to see me today, I wanted to look like a professional who had simply moved on with dignity. By 8 a.m., I was at a small cafe near Nexus headquarters, close enough to see the building but far enough to maintain plausible deniability about my presence. My laptop showed several open windows, the technical forums where Nexus presentations were often discussed in real time, a few chat windows with former colleagues, and most importantly, a shared screen session that Patricia had accidentally left open with permission she'd forgotten to revoke. I could see the Prometheus system dashboard. Everything looked normal on the surface, green lights across the board. But I knew what those green lights meant in demonstration mode. They were like the check engine light that Marcus had disabled in his BMW because it was annoying. Everything looked fine until you actually needed the engine to perform. At 8:30, Dr. Angela Foster arrived. I recognized her from her TED Talks, silver hair pulled back severely, wearing a MIT blazer-like armor, wheeling a small suitcase that probably contained enough technical knowledge to destroy a dozen fraudulent presentations. She was met by Derek Chen, the VP who'd sat silently during my termination. Even from a distance, I could see his nervous energy as he escorted her inside. My phone rang. Jennifer Walsh. Are you watching this? She asked without preamble. Watching what? Don't play coy. Half of Seattle Tech is waiting for the Marcus implosion. There's actually a betting pool on how long he'll last before Dr. Foster destroys him. That's unprofessional, I said, though I couldn't help asking, what are the odds? 20 minutes is the favorite. Though some optimists have him lasting until the first technical deep dive. At 8:45, another text from Sarah. Foster just asked to see the development environment. Marcus said it wasn't necessary for the presentation. She said, I'll decide what's necessary. Marcus looks like he's about to vomit. At 9 o'clock, the presentation was scheduled to begin. Through Patricia's screen share, I watched the authentication prompt appear. This was the moment. Would they enter the codes correctly? Bradley was at the keyboard, Marcus hovering behind him like an anxious parent at a spelling bee. Bradley typed something, hit enter. The system responded. Authentication successful. Demonstration mode activated. But the message appeared only in the logs that Marcus had instructed them to disable. To Bradley and Marcus, it looked like normal activation. They high-fived, while behind them, my team exchanged knowing glances. Dr. Foster sat at the head of the conference table like a judge preparing to pass sentence. The clients, 3 representatives from major financial institutions, flanked her, tablets ready, expressions neutral. Marcus stood at the presentation screen, his usual swagger diminished to nervous energy. Welcome, everyone, Marcus began, his voice slightly higher than normal. Today, we're excited to demonstrate Prometheus, Nexus Technologies' revolutionary AI-driven security system, which I've been leading for the past 18 months. Interesting. Dr. Foster interrupted, not 3 sentences in. Your LinkedIn shows you joining the project 8 months ago. Could you clarify? Marcus's smile flickered. Well, I mean leading in the strategic sense. The vision, the direction. I see. And the technical architecture? Was developed by my team under my guidance. Marcus said, the lie sliding out smooth as oil. Through the screen share, I could see Sarah typing in the team chat. He just claimed credit for the neural network design. The one he called a fancy spreadsheet last week. Dr. Foster made a note. Let's see the system in action. Bradley began the demonstration, clicking through the interface with the confidence of someone who'd memorized the sequence without understanding it. The system responded beautifully, at first. User authentication, check. Threat detection, check. Pattern analysis, check. Impressive interface. One of the clients commented. Thank you. Marcus preened. We focused on user experience. The interface was designed by Sarah Park. Patricia said quietly from her seat. She has a background in UX design as well as engineering. Marcus shot her a look that could have curdled milk. Yes, Sarah contributed under my direction. Dr. Foster turned to Sarah. Ms. Park, what design principles did you follow? Sarah stood slightly. I focused on reducing cognitive load for security analysts who might be monitoring multiple systems. The color coding follows NATO standard threat levels, and the layout is based on eye-tracking studies showing optimal information flow. Excellent. And Mr. Wheeler, how did you direct this? Marcus fumbled. I emphasized the importance of user-friendliness. I see. Another note. The demonstration continued. Bradley showed how the system could detect intrusion attempts, how it learned from patterns, how it adapted to new threats. It all looked perfect, too perfect. Dr. Foster stood. Let's try something more interesting. Can you show me how the system handles a Byzantine fault? Bradley's hands froze over the keyboard. A Byzantine fault? A situation where components might fail in arbitrary ways, possibly giving conflicting information. Surely a revolutionary system accounts for this? This was first-year distributed systems knowledge, but Bradley looked like she'd asked him to explain quantum mechanics in Mandarin. Marcus jumped in. Bradley, show her the fault tolerance module. The which module? My team, I could see through the screen share, was struggling not to laugh. James had his head in his hands. David was biting his lip. Sarah was taking notes with unnecessary intensity. Perhaps, Dr. Foster suggested with a smile that didn't reach her eyes, someone who actually built the system could demonstrate. Patricia stood without being asked. I can show you the Byzantine fault handling, Dr. Foster. I wrote that module. You wrote it? Dr. Foster's eyebrow raised. Under Mr. Wheeler's direction, of course? Actually, Patricia said, walking to the keyboard, Mr. Morrison designed the approach. It's based on his 2022 paper on consensus algorithms in hostile environments. Mr. Wheeler wasn't involved in this component. Marcus's face was turning interesting colors, red, white, a sort of purple I'd never seen in nature. Patricia is being modest. I provided strategic oversight. Mr. Wheeler. Dr. Foster interrupted. Can you explain the consensus algorithm being used? Silence. Beautiful, horrible, devastating silence. It ensures consensus. Marcus tried. How? Through algorithmic processes. Dr. Foster turned to the clients. Gentlemen, I think we need to have individual technical interviews with the team members. That's not necessary. Marcus started. I'll determine what's necessary. Dr. Foster said coldly. Mr. Wheeler, Mr. Chen, please wait outside. I'd like to speak with the engineers. As Marcus left, he shot a look at the team that promised retribution. But it was an empty threat from a man whose empire was crumbling. Through the screen share, I watched Dr. Foster systematically interview each team member. Sarah explained the real architecture. James detailed the security vulnerabilities Marcus had ignored. David outlined the shortcuts that had been taken over engineering objections. Patricia provided dates, times, and email threads for every decision. And then Dr. Foster asked the question I'd been waiting for. The system seems to be running in some kind of limited mode. The response times are too consistent, the threat detection too pattern-based. Is this the full system? Sarah and Patricia exchanged glances. The authentication codes, Sarah said carefully, were entered by Bradley. We don't know which codes he used. Show me the logs, Dr. Foster commanded. Mr. Wheeler instructed us to disable logging for performance. Re-enable them. Now. Patricia's fingers flew over the keyboard. Within seconds, the logs appeared, showing the damning message. Demonstration mode activated. Dr. Foster stood slowly. Bring Mr. Wheeler and Mr. Chen back in. When Marcus returned, his swagger was completely gone. He looked like a man approaching the gallows. Mr. Wheeler, Dr. Foster began. Your system is running in demonstration mode. Can you explain why? That must be a mistake. Bradley? Bradley was sweating through his shirt. I entered the codes you gave me. You gave him the wrong codes? Dr. Foster's voice was dangerously quiet. For your own system? The codes were changed. Harold, Mr. Morrison, he must have. Mr. Morrison was terminated Friday. Derek finally spoke up. He hasn't had system access since. Then how? The correct codes, Patricia said. Follow a pattern, Mr. Morrison taught us in his cryptography workshop. Any competent engineer on the team knows them. But you'd have to understand the underlying mathematics. Dr. Foster turned to the clients. Gentlemen, I think we've seen enough. This is not a revolutionary system. It's a competent but compromised implementation being presented by people who don't understand it. The actual engineers are clearly talented, but the leadership. She let the sentence hang. One of the clients stood. We'll need to discuss this internally, but I think our decision is clear. As they filed out, Marcus grabbed Derek's arm. This is sabotage. Harold planned this. Harold, Derek said, removing Marcus's hand, didn't make you claim credit for work you didn't understand. He didn't make you ignore security warnings. He didn't make you put an incompetent golf buddy in charge of a critical system. You did all that yourself. Through the screen share, I watched my team, my former team, my legacy, standing together as Marcus's world collapsed. They hadn't lied. They hadn't sabotaged. They'd simply told the truth. And sometimes the truth is the most devastating weapon of all. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number, but I recognized the tone. Well played, Mr. Morrison. The position at MIT is yours if you want it. A. Foster. By noon, the Seattle tech world was on fire with the news. The infamous Nexus Monday massacre was trending on local Twitter. Someone had leaked audio of Dr. Foster asking Marcus to explain Byzantine faults. His stammering response had already been remixed into 3 different techno tracks. I was still at the cafe when Robert Kim walked in, carrying 2 sandwiches and wearing the biggest grin I'd ever seen. You beautiful, brilliant bastard, he said, sitting down across from me. You didn't do anything. That's the genius of it. You literally did nothing except train your team to tell the truth. I don't know what you're talking about, I said, accepting the sandwich. I was terminated Friday. Today's events have nothing to do with me. Right. And I suppose it's just coincidence that Dr. Foster mentioned she might have a position for someone with your exact qualifications. The world is full of coincidences. Robert pulled out his phone, showing me an email thread. Derek Shin just reached out to me. Unofficially, of course. Nexus wants to know if Meridian would be interested in taking over the Prometheus project, with the original team intact. Minus Marcus and Bradley, naturally. And I said we'd be interested, but only if we could bring in a senior architect to review the code and fix the vulnerabilities. Someone who understands the system intimately. My phone rang. Sarah Park. Mr. Morrison, you need to know what's happening here. Her voice was breathless with excitement. Marcus just got escorted out by security. But before that, Derek called an all-hands meeting. He apologized to the entire engineering department for recent leadership failures and announced that they're restructuring the entire management approach. Good for them. That's not all. He asked Patricia to present the real Prometheus architecture to the board tomorrow. And he mentioned that they're looking for a new CTO, someone with, and I quote, deep technical knowledge and a proven track record of building both systems and teams. After I hung up, Robert leaned back in his chair. So you have MIT, Meridian, probably Nexus trying to win you back, and I heard Amazon's preparing an offer. How does it feel to be the most wanted man in Seattle tech? Like vindication, I admitted. But not for me, for the principle that competence matters, that you can't fake expertise, that eventually the truth comes out. My phone buzzed with another text. This one made me laugh out loud. What? Robert asked. I showed him the message from Jennifer Walsh. Local news wants to interview you about the importance of technical leadership in the digital age. Also, Marcus just applied for a position at my company. I scheduled his interview with my most technical engineer, the one who makes Dr. Foster look friendly. Tuesday morning brought unexpected rain, even for Seattle, the kind of downpour that floods streets and reveals which buildings have neglected maintenance. Appropriate weather for washing away the old and revealing hidden flaws. I was at home, reviewing the various job offers that had materialized overnight, when Patricia and Sarah appeared at my door, soaking wet but smiling. We quit, Sarah announced as I handed them towels. All of us, Patricia added. The entire team. We submitted our resignations an hour ago. I gestured them to the living room, processing this information. That was brave. And possibly foolish. Derek offered us raises to stay, Sarah said, wringing out her hair. Promised Marcus's job to Patricia, team lead to me. But we realized something during yesterday's disaster. We don't want to work for a company that only values us after a public humiliation. Patricia pulled out her laptop. We have a proposition. That Project Phoenix you've been developing, we want in. Phoenix is just theoretical. No, it's not. Patricia interrupted, showing me her screen. I've been analyzing it. It's Prometheus done right, plus innovations that are 5 years ahead of anything on the market. With your permission, we've been sketching out our business plan. Sarah jumped in. Jennifer Walsh wants to fund it. Robert Kim wants to partner. We've already got interest from 3 potential clients who were at yesterday's presentation. They saw what we could build without interference. And you want me to what? Start a company? Lead a company. Patricia corrected. We'll handle the building. You handle the vision. Like it should have been all along. I looked at these 2 brilliant engineers, still dripping on my carpet, ready to follow me into uncertainty rather than accept comfortable positions at a company that had proven it didn't deserve them. The others? James is in. David too. Even Tom Chong from QA wants to join. He said he's tired of testing broken systems instead of building solid ones. My phone rang. Derek Chin. Harold, I know you have no reason to take my call. Then why are you calling, Derek? Because I need to apologize. Not the corporate kind, a real one. I sat there while Marcus destroyed everything you built. I prioritized politics over competence. And now your entire team is leaving, and I can't blame them. What do you want, Derek? To make you an offer. CTO position. Double your previous salary. Full autonomy over technical decisions. Marcus's entire budget at your disposal. No. Harold, please. Derek, you're trying to buy back something that was never for sale, integrity. Nexus had 23 years to value what I brought. You chose Marcus. Now you get to live with that choice. After I hung up, Sarah was grinning. So? Phoenix Technologies? That's a terrible name, I said. Phoenix is about resurrection from ashes. We're not resurrecting anything, we're building something entirely new. Morrison Systems? Patricia suggested. Too egotistical. We spent the next hour debating names, sketching organizational structures, discussing technical architecture. It felt like the best brainstorming sessions from the old days, except now there was no Marcus to swoop in and claim credit, no arbitrary deadlines, no forced compromises. Finally, Sarah said, Cascade Technologies? Like the mountain range, but also like cascading improvements, each iteration building on the last. Cascade? I tested the word. It felt right. Cascade Technologies? Building systems that flow naturally from problem to solution. Patricia was already checking domain availability. It's free. So is the trademark. Then I guess we're doing this. Sarah whooped. Patricia smiled her quiet smile. And somewhere across Seattle, Marcus was probably updating his LinkedIn, trying to spin yesterday's disaster into a learning experience, or a pivot to new opportunities. 6 weeks later, I stood in Cascade Technologies' new office, a converted warehouse in Georgetown, all exposed brick and natural light, as different from Nexus's fluorescent cube farm as possible. The space hummed with focused energy as my team, my partners now, worked on our first client deliverable. The transformation had been remarkable. Jennifer Walsh had come through with seed funding. Robert Kim had partnered on 2 projects. Even Dr. Foster had sent potential clients our way, with a note saying, finally, engineers who understand what they're building. Marcus, I'd heard through the grapevine, had landed at a startup that lasted exactly 3 weeks before discovering he'd vastly exaggerated his technical abilities. Bradley was working at his uncle's insurance company, safely away from any actual code. Derek was still at Nexus, presiding over a department hemorrhaging talent as word spread about what had really happened. Mr. Morrison, Harold. James corrected himself, still adjusting to our flat organizational structure. The authentication system for the banking client is ready for review. I looked at his code, clean, elegant, with error handling that would make a Swiss watchmaker proud. No shortcuts, no compromises, no technical debt we'd have to pay later. It's beautiful, I told him, meaning it. But what happens if someone tries to bypass the primary authentication? James smiled. I learned from the best. There are 3 fallback systems, each with its own validation. It would be easier to rob the bank physically than digitally. Sarah called out from across the room. Harold, that reporter is here, the one doing the feature on technical leadership in the digital age. The reporter was young, eager, armed with questions about the Nexus incident, as it had become known. But I steered the conversation away from revenge narratives and toward what really mattered. The tech industry has a problem, I told her. We've confused management with leadership, presentations with products, buzzwords with building. Real technical leadership isn't about taking credit, it's about creating environments where brilliant people can do brilliant work. But what about Marcus Wheeler? Do you feel vindicated by his downfall? Marcus was a symptom, not the disease. For every Marcus who gets exposed, there are dozens who continue to fail upward, leaving destroyed teams and broken systems in their wake. My focus isn't on the past, it's on building something better. And Project Prometheus? Nexus stock dropped 12% after losing that contract. Prometheus was compromised from the start by management that didn't understand what they were managing. At Cascade, we're building systems the way they should be built, with patience, expertise, and respect for the technology and the people who create it. After the reporter left, I stood at the window, watching the Seattle rain that had started again, constant and cleansing. Linda would have been proud of this, not the revenge, which she would have considered petty, but the building, the teaching, the creating of something worthwhile. Patricia approached with a tablet. The authentication codes for our new system, should we use the same Fibonacci approach? No, I said. That was the past. Create something new. Something yours. She nodded and returned to her desk, where the team was deep in discussion about quantum-resistant encryption. No one was checking their phone for the time. No one was worried about arbitrary deadlines. They were engineers doing what engineers do best, solving problems that mattered. My phone buzzed. A LinkedIn notification. Marcus Wheeler has viewed your profile. I deleted the notification without reading it fully. Marcus was the past. Nexus was the past. Even the vindication was the past. The future was in this room, in these brilliant minds I'd had the privilege to mentor, in the systems we were building without compromise. The future was in doing the work right, not because someone was watching or because there was credit to be claimed, but because that's what craftsmen do. Harold, Sarah called out. We're ordering lunch. Want your usual? Whatever the team's having, I replied. Because that's what it was now, not my team, but the team. Partners in building something that would outlast any corporate politics, any management fad, any smirking manager who thought they could dispose of expertise like obsolete equipment. The rain intensified, drumming against the windows like applause. Somewhere in Seattle, Marcus was probably still trying to explain away his failure. But here, in this converted warehouse with its exposed brick and natural light, we were too busy building the future to care about the past. And that, more than any revenge, was the ultimate victory. 1 year later. The email arrived on a Thursday morning, exactly 1 year after Marcus had delivered his smirking dismissal. Harold, I know you probably won't read this, but I need to say it. I was wrong. Not just about your value to Nexus, but about what leadership means. Watching Cascade's success while struggling to find my own way has been humbling. I'm not asking for forgiveness or a job. I'm just acknowledging what should have been obvious. Technical expertise matters, and I was a fool to think otherwise. Marcus. I read it twice, then archived it without responding. Some lessons come too late to matter. Cascade Technologies had just secured its series of funding at a valuation that made our seed investors very happy. We'd hired 12 more engineers, each one technically brilliant and professionally undervalued by their previous employers. Patricia had patented 2 new encryption methods. Sarah was speaking at conferences about user-centric security design. James had become the mentor to junior developers that I'd once been to him. The best revenge, I'd learned, wasn't destroying those who'd wronged you. It was building something so undeniably excellent that their failure became a footnote to your success. Linda's photo sat on my new desk, not a corner office, just a desk among my partners. In the photo, she was laughing at something I'd said about office politics, back when I thought the corporate game was worth playing. You were right, I told her photo, as I did every morning. The only thing worth building is something that matters. Outside, Seattle was doing its usual October performance. Gray skies, gentle rain, the promise of renewal in every drop. Inside Cascade Technologies, brilliant minds were solving real problems with elegant code. And somewhere in the city, Marcus Wheeler was learning what I tried to teach him 6 years ago. In technology, respect is earned through understanding, not through authority. The poetry of mathematics, indeed.